the show about Rhode Island and the people, places, and events that make Rhode Island a great place to live, that build our communities. And today we have someone with us who I feel has done so much, at least in Providence and Rhode Island, but even beyond. Sebastion Ruth is here. He's the founder and artistic director of Community MusicWorks, which takes instruments and kids and puts them together in groups until they learn music and learn to play and learn the love of that art. So thank you for being here, Sebastion. I've wanted you to come for a long time, so I'm very happy you're here.
Thank you for having me, yeah.
You somehow got the idea to do this. You are a musician yourself, so maybe you could talk a little bit about how that transition happened, that you came to Providence.
Yeah, so I grew up playing music, violin and viola, and knew, from the time I was a teenager that I wanted it to be a significant part of my life. But wasn't sure in what way that would, come together. I went to Brown as an undergrad and did a series of projects on music and education and social justice, and really thinking about how music and education in music can impact a young person's life. And had an opportunity to apply for a public service fellowship from the university when I was a senior, to start a musician residency in the south side of Providence, really kind of with the ambition or the intention to explore what it was like for a professional musical ensemble to live and work, teach, perform in the context of an urban community, to both create a rewarding life for the musicians, as performers and educators, and also to experiment with a kind of methodology or pedagogy in music instruction in a community setting, where it's equally about having young people grow as artists and grow as citizens, and to think, what ways do we want to emphasize musical learning, and what ways do we want to incorporate a discussion or awareness building, consciousness raising for young people, so that they can grow as strong young adults into our community. So that was the initial impulse.
So that's a lot. I mean, you've just said a huge mouthful of hope and of a sense of focus and mission. Can you just explain, maybe in very flat-footed terms, what is the relationship between social justice and music? Because maybe social justice is a term that kind of goes over people's heads, but certainly music people know, but maybe not classical. So how do you see that all working together?
Yeah. I actually had a professor in college when I was trying to work on these ideas and write a paper about it, and he stopped me and he said, "Ruth, so where's that moment, here I am listening to Duke Ellington, where's that moment that something changes for me?" He was like really pushing me to articulate what is that connection between music and some kind of transformation. And in a lot of ways, Community MusicWorks is the experiment to keep trying to figure that out. But
you said transformation is social justice. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think the definition of social justice that that I think is most relevant to our work is every person in our society and our democracy having a voice, and that's justice. And to the extent that music can facilitate young people's path toward gaining self-confidence, toward gaining a sense of identity, toward trusting what they have to say, both figuratively and literally, what they have to say in a musical sense, but also what they have to say, what their opinion is, that's how we work toward justice, giving young people a voice.
So they are in schools where maybe they're not getting any music, and you have an after-school program for them that basically begins to integrate with their whole life. Is that right?
Yeah. The work we're doing is during the out-of-school hours, and certainly kids come in. They come in anywhere between age 6 and age 18, and some stay for that whole span of time, elementary, middle, and high school. But yeah, in terms of being part of their whole lives, siblings, families are involved. Our teens tend to be the most engaged, coming multiple times a week, and really feeling like there's a family of peers that they rely on as friends and kind of mentors of their own. So yeah, so this becomes a strong part of kids' identities.
Every child has musical ability?
We don't screen for ability or talent. Our feeling is that a musical opportunity is about a mentoring relationship. It's about sustained work toward a goal or toward a project. That there's musicality within everybody. Some approaches say, let's figure out if this is your voice, this is your instrument, this is your activity. We tend not to screen that way. We tend to say anyone who wants to join is eligible, and we'll work with any kid.
So you have this idea that all kids can work together, certainly, and that all kids can find a voice within themselves, whether or not it's with an instrument. And what you're doing is creating symphonies or orchestras, I should say, that suddenly this child hears, when I work together with these other people after I've practiced, all of this comes together. Is that?
Yeah, there's so one part is just individual. So students are having one-on-one lessons with a teacher. And so some of their musicianship is just my solo voice. A kid will work for 3 months and we might have them perform just the violin hold or a song that they just pluck the strings to just get a sense of, I can do something on this instrument. This is, let's have the kid represent themselves in a solo way. Then all of our students are playing in ensembles. So small string orchestras, maybe 10 or 12 kids. Once a year, we'll bring together all the students for a giant Community MusicWorks symphony of 130. And then we have a program called our Daily Orchestra Program, where a group of elementary school students are meeting 5 days a week, having lessons one day, having a one-on-one mentoring session with an older student or a college student, or an adult volunteer another day. But every day, 5 days a week, they're having an hour-long experience in a group of about 20 kids playing in an orchestra. So yes, the collective music making is important for all of the students, but also the individual music making and kind of instilling a ritual of practice and individual goal setting is also a part of it.
So when you hear you're doing better, you're encouraged and you work harder. That's the idea. When the kids get together, they become friends. And so you've formed a safe community. You're essentially a safe house.
Yeah. Yeah, when we really set out to do this program, my colleagues and I sat at one point and said, what were the moments that got us hooked on doing music seriously in our lives? And one of the common threads was it was usually summer music festivals or other moments of music making with peers where the music making was the kind of backbone of the experience, but it was really about the socializing with other kids your age and the fun and the deep bonds that you find with other kids through the music making, that's really what turned us on to music making. And we thought, how do we recreate that with our students in Providence? And that's when we started this Phase 2 program, which was the teen program. Because until that point, we were finding that elementary school kids did it for the curiosity and the novelty of trying out this instrument, but that when they were getting to 12, 13, they were kind of leaving the program because this was something they did when they were little and it wasn't cool for them to do it anymore. So we kind of tried to flip that around and make the teen experience where it gets more social. You're doing it because you want to be with your friends So we made the Phase 2 program on a Friday night. So this was a kind of a destination for kids to come together, have fun, have a meal together, and then play music and have a discussion. And so that has, over the more than a decade now we've had that program, become in a way the heart of the experience for a lot of kids, where the community, the music learning, and the music performance all comes together.
And how many kids is that?
The Phase 2 is about 15 or 20 kids, depending on the year.
So the other night I went to a concert and I saw teenagers starting out with a new composition that was written taking on the notes of all the other compositions that were going to be played, and the patterns and the phraseology. And I saw them playing together. But then I saw them two little areas later, I saw them playing with you and with the professors. And I thought, when did I ever do anything with the principal of a school or the dean of the school or whatever? There was no interaction at all. And that alone must do something for their self-esteem. And they played beautifully.
Yeah.
It really, really worked.
Yeah, well, we think of it as musicianship as a continuum, So the professional ensemble, which we call the CMW Players, is the ensemble in residence, and we have our concert life that's sometimes separate from the students. Right, we play about 30 concerts a year. But a 6-year-old is on the continuum of learning. 16-year-old is fellows who are young professionals who are coming to teach and play with us at age 26 are on that continuum, and we are. And then there's guest musicians like the Kronos Quartet or the Orion Quartet, who come, and they're on the same continuum. So it's like you're always on the way to something as a musician. So those moments where we can come together with our students and make music together, I think they reflect our mission, but they're also such important learning moments, for the kids. So the performance you heard was not only the Phase 2 students and Phase 3 students, actually, because those are the most advanced, but also you heard 4 alums who are still in the area, some of them in college, still playing music. So we had some, again, on that continuum. These are the 18 to 24-year-olds who are still engaged, who we bring back for special opportunities.
And you have a lot of connections with other organizations in Rhode Island to make sure that you're not this isolated group of musicians. Who else are you working with?
So one of the important collaborations that we have is with the Providence Youth Arts Collaborative, and there are 6 organizations with similar missions that are doing significant arts training with young people, particularly free of charge, and with a goal toward empowering young people to become future leaders. And those are the Everett Company Stage and School, AS220 Youth, New Urban Arts, Providence City Arts for Youth, and the Manton Avenue Project. So in all artistic disciplines, but youth serving, working with kids mostly in disinvested communities. So that's an important collaboration. We also, as you know, do a series of concerts at the RISD Museum, so that's an important collaborator. We'll have a concert every year at Brown University, and one of our important non-arts partners is College Visions, which is working with seniors in high school to facilitate their path to college, making sure they have good support for the college application process. And so that after...
Having to do with music or not?
Not necessarily, yeah. But after we've worked with kids for 5 or 10 years, we're really eager to see them succeed in their next chapter. So College Visions is a really important partner for us to make sure our seniors have the support they need to get onto college, and colleges that they can afford and that have good programs for them.
I went to a concert, it was at RISD, and then I went to it at a church here in Providence, where the students were all over the church and playing. And it was, and with the throat singer.
Yeah.
from Berkeley.
Yeah.
That was just an amazing concert, and I felt like each student had to play individually. I was sitting next to somebody, and they had to play individually. That alone would get somebody to realize that they should move on and keep moving to college. And when you have special guests like that coming in, the special guests really impact the students.
Yeah, for sure. And this has been a great privilege over the last few years, is that we've been able to commission a number of new pieces from composers, from living composers. Sometimes those commissions are just for the professional ensemble. Sometimes they're for a mix of students and the professionals. And in some cases, new works just for students. One of my colleagues, Chase Spool, who curated the concert at RISD, has been doing some arrangements also. So the CMW Symphony project at the end of the year is usually a specially arranged piece for us. One of the significant ones recently was a violin concerto based in salsa music. So our students made up the orchestra side by side with their teachers, and then there was a guest salsa band leader, and a guest violin soloist. And one of the neat things about that, it was a piece written for our community, because more than half of our kids have Latin American backgrounds. And so their parents and grandparents were coming saying, this is our music, and yet the kids are learning the kind of classical music technique to be able to make a salsa orchestra. So those are the opportunities that we're really excited about, these recent years, to think not only are we playing sort of the traditional classical music, but are we pushing the art form itself to be one that reflects the population of folks we're working with.
So you're not creating dinosaurs. I mean, there's so many people who no longer listen to classical music, and you're getting kids to appreciate classical music, and not only appreciate it, but to practice it, to play it, and then to hear it in its next iteration, which is modern or contemporary composition. And how do you do that in society?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that the Alex Ross, who writes about music for the New Yorker magazine, had a great article a number of years ago where he said, I think that jazz musicians have it right, because they just call their music the music. I don't know why classical music is stuck with this label, classical. Because everybody thinks it has a highbrow. Yeah, and he said, let's just call it the music, because really, music is one universe, right? It doesn't have to be in silos that say, this is jazz, and this is Bjork, and this is classical period, and this is contemporary. It's music. And in a lot of ways, that's the spirit we try to embrace with Community MusicWorks. Sometimes people ask me the question, these kids don't have classical music in their families or in their cultural traditions. Do they like it? And we say, it's not quite the right question, actually, because we don't think of it as classical music as distinct from music that our Dominican families listen to, distinct from what kids are listening to on their headphones. We think of it as a musical language, so we're training kids in that musical language and with techniques so they can be pretty musically nimble and play and listen and respond and improvise in all kinds of styles. So I think that's the answer to, what is the future of classical music? How do we get people engaged? Is not to think of these things as entirely separate, but music is a celebration. Music is a form of breathing. And so
it is a form of breathing. I just wonder how many people play it as they're doing their things around their house or whatever. And I feel like the radio stations are becoming less and less oriented toward what I consider to be classical music. I really like all kinds of music as well, but I'd rather have a station that listen to everything. But that's not your venue. But I still feel it's so important to teach what has gone before, and then the ways that style moves into the present and the future.
Yeah. And I think, the word relevance comes up a lot, So in what way is Mozart relevant to today's world, or, in what way is classical music relevant? And that, to me, that idea is again, that this is an entirely human phenomenon, right? And we, in a way, it's not so different if it's Mozart or what's on the radio that was written yesterday. These are human expressions, and we need that. And I think if we're successful for young people, we're breaking down the idea that there is a real distinction. One of my favorite stories from a few years ago was a student who came to a concert we played of the Mendelssohn Octet, which is a real kind of barn burner chamber music piece, and she got so into it. She was a cellist, and it was like she'd been studying and she'd been loving Community MusicWorks and the relationships and the people for years, but she never really crossed over to wanting to listen to it on her own time. And we came away from this concert, and she said, "That was amazing. The piece was incredible." And we said, "Yeah, that's right." She said, "No, you don't get it. I want to put it on my iPod."
That's the ultimate compliment.
She's like, and it was like, yeah, why shouldn't a track of Mendelssohn be next to a track of something else and popular? So that it again, it's not. This is a special, refined activity that we only do in concert halls, but this can be part of the soundtrack of kids' lives.
You've been recognized by the President of the United States for the work that you've done, or the work that Community MusicWorks has done. It's pretty amazing the influence that you've had from an idea that started, I guess, in college and in a senior project, and suddenly now it's getting national recognition.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a community effort. My colleagues and I have been chipping away at this project for going on 19 years here. I think what's gratifying about it is that we're trying to make a case both locally and globally that there's a role for musicians to have satisfying performance careers, but in the context of working toward some positive change in our world, right? So that musicians don't have to go into only the traditional careers in orchestras or sort of touring chamber music careers that are the standard classical music careers, but really that folks can make their life by investing deeply in a community and have it be artistically rich and satisfying. So I think those moments of recognition hopefully just help to spread the idea that this is possible.
I have to think about that, because you're being very modest about it all, but I think it's really wonderful that a small group in a sometimes forgotten area of a little city made it to the White House. So there's your praise right there. You're looking for community support as well, and you do things for Waterfire and Earthworks, etc. So you have a lot of engagement with larger organizations in the Providence or Rhode Island area. What can people do to help you?
Yeah, well, the organization is funded entirely by contributions. So our students are coming to these programs for free, and we provide the instruments, we provide the lessons entirely free of charge, and our musicians are paid on a salary. So this is something, again, we're trying to challenge the idea that musicians could only do something for the public good, sort of on volunteer time, but really to say we can make a case that this is critical for our young people in our cities, it's critical for our communities to have these deep experiences in the arts, and we should make it sustainable for artists to do this work. So we pay our musicians on a salary with benefits, and we support young people through 10 or more years of their lives. In terms of how it all comes together, about half of our budget comes from grants and foundations, and the other half comes from individual donations.
Okay, so you can help. That's the answer. You can help. And please look up Community MusicWorks. We're going to give you a couple of minutes of a concert that was played last Saturday at RISD. And it is with both the teachers, the professors, and the students, and then incoming or returning students as well. I want to thank you, Sebastion Ruth, for everything that you're doing and for this brilliant idea. You really make Rhode Island a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you so much.